Guten Morgen, everybody. It is officially summer. It's hot up here. The sun is out, and it is driving season in California. Bring out your sports cars, and welcome to the AMG GT63, all new for 2024. As you have probably noticed and seen elsewhere, it's not the same as the outgoing AMG GT. Mercedes have done a thing where, in order to improve sales of the GT as well as probably their margins, the GT and the SL have become the same car. The SL is the convertible, the GT is the coupe, but most of the bodywork, particularly the lower bodywork, basically all of the interior and everything but the roof, the powertrain and the mechanicals are all shared between those two cars, which when I first saw this GT at Pebble Beach last year, I went, oh no, they did that? Oh, I was so disappointed, particularly because when we reviewed the SL63 last year, I didn't love it. And then when I drove the SL43 this year, I still didn't love it. But open mind, and hopefully the GT has some unique tuning, unique bits that make it more sporting. The important things to know are that it is very heavy. It's actually heavier than the SL. 22 pounds heavier than the SL. It's 4,330 pounds. That's a ton. That's 600 pounds heavier than the last gen GT. It's 700 pounds heavier than the 911 Turbo S. It's actually, Zach's driving an Alfa Romeo Giulia QV over there today. It's 500 pounds heavier than that, and it's 300 pounds heavier than a base Ford F-150 single cab. But it has all the gadgets to manage that weight. It's got AMG Active Ride with hydraulically linked corners like McLaren and Rivian do rather than sway bars. It's got rear steer. It's got the AMG Dynamic Select, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And of course, it's got that 4-liter twin-turbo V8 with the 9-speed multi-clutch gearbox, 577 horsepower, 590 pound-feet of torque, which I will just demonstrate now, because Mercedes says that it will do 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. So we're going to go into race mode and just do a little launch ski here. And here we go. Race start. Let's go. Oh, big torque. Wow. Belt cinched up real tight there. So it gets out of the hole better, right? It gets out of the hole really well. That all-wheel drive system is incredibly effective. And wow, this seatbelt is probably showing off my fat exceptionally. So now we'll go into my setting, which is the individual setting. You've got Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, and Race, and then Individual, where you can select your own parameters with that AMG menu. I like the powertrain in Kill, the gearbox in Manual, the shocks in Sport, which is the middle setting for canyons, or Comfort for every day, and then that Dynamic Select in Pro. So Dynamic Select, that's different from just traction control, and it's different from the other drive modes. What that does is it allows you to control the rear steer, the anti-roll control, the torque vectoring, the differentials, and the torque split of the all-wheel drive with some different settings. As you go from basic all the way up to master, it makes the car much sharper and actually does really change the character of the car. And what's really amazing is, yes, it is heavy, but it's quite agile. The steering is really sharp. The body control is really good. And the envelope of usability, meaning from canyon to everyday daily driver to road trip, is right there. It is a little behind something like a Bentley GT for a road trip, but that is a level of opulence that is really extraordinary and unique. Plus, Bentleys now, their prices start with a 3. The price of this starts with a 1, and you have to work pretty hard to get it to start with a 2. So, different type of car, really fast. Really, really fast. Despite what the number says on the scale, it makes very good use of the power, the torque, and the technology to get you up and down this mountain at a pace. The 9-speed wet clutch MCT gearbox, super responsive. And if you saw that review of the SL63, you might get the idea that my vibe is a little different in this video than with the SL, and that's true because the tuning of this car is so much different. The added structure of a fixed roof means they can make the shocks ride softer and still have the same type of body control. Woo! It's got unique programming for the torque vectoring and for the rear steer, and consequently, particularly in Pro or Master dynamic select mode. Let's go into Master. Master of torque vectoring is pulling the strings. When you go into Master, it makes the rear steer feel much more natural. In the SL, it felt almost like you were like drifting through corners because it was big angles on the rear steer. Now, in this GT, it's particularly in the higher modes, it doesn't do that. But I'll make a little U-turn ski here and go back up the hill. I do wish the steering had a little more feedback, but it is very sharp. Like not quite Ferrari sharp, but sharper than Aston Martin or Bentley. And that's really where Mercedes wants to be here. The point is, they didn't want to try to compete with Porsche. They wanted to try to compete with Aston and Bentley. And that's actually where I think this car is quite successful. I've dailied it, and I've taken it on a little road trip this week, plus twice on the hill. I've done over 500 miles in this car, and it's quite the delight. Without the rear seat, which is optional in the GT, this one's just got the parcel shelf. It's got such a big trunk. It's now a hatchback. It'll hold so much luggage, plus the parcel shelf. Great for a road trip. These seats are really adjustable and very comfy, although I might skip the white. This car's only got a couple thousand miles on it, and the white's a little grimy already, but it's been really hot out, and so having white leather is not the worst thing. It's keeping me from getting that car sweat going. The sound. Sound is fantastic, possibly augmented by speakers. There's a hint of digital, it might be coming through the speakers a little bit, but I do find it very pleasant. And although that engine, the 4-liter twin turbo, it's no longer dry sump, right? So in the old GT, it sat back, it sat low, because that dry sump allowed it to sit low. There was no oil pan under there. Now it's a wet sump. So rather than being a true front mid with a low engine, it's a front engine car and it's much higher. So the whole car has gotten taller. It's also gotten longer and wider. It's bigger in every dimension. And but the whole thing, it still looks pretty elegant. I mean, in the grand scheme of cars, it is a nice looking car. People on the street who have asked me about it, they seem to be real into it. And I do like how it looks. Just don't park it next to a 2018 GTC, because the Art Deco gorgeousness of that car, it doesn't really exist here. Having said that, the all-wheel drive, it's mostly rear biased most of the time. So the car retains a rear drive characteristic, and in the sport drive modes, it can send 100% of the torque to the rear, which is good. And it does allow for the car to be an all-season car, daily it all year. I like that. That was me hitting red line. It does not automatically upshift in the manual modes. Check one. It's funny, I wanted to hate the car based on the look of it and the fact that it was a coupe version of the SL. I prejudged it. And yeah, it's heavier, and heavy is bad, objectively bad, and in the world of hardcore gearheads like you folks, yeah, it's bad. That's not good. But in terms of its usability as an everyday car, it's better than the old one. In terms of its comfort on a road trip, it's better than the old one. And in terms of its ride and handling, it's actually better than the old one. The old one was more fun, and the old one was prettier. No way around that. But will they sell more of these to more people who want to use them as daily driver cars? I think they will. And so if I'm Mercedes and I make that decision, I can't really argue with it. The bottom line is, it drives great. The differences from the SL to this make a huge amount of difference on the hill, and they make it nicer to use in the city as well because it's not as stiff. So on bad roads, this rides better. I filled up the hatchback a whole bunch. I used the parcel shelf. There's a lot that's really nice here. And yeah, if you want the fastest car that you can buy for $175,000 to $200,000, you're looking at high-end 911s, turbos, or loaded up GTSs, maybe used GT3s, that kind of thing. This isn't that. This is a Grand Touring car. And in the context of this versus Bentley, this drives better. And the Bentley's 1,000 pounds heavier still. The Bentley's 5,300 pounds. Okay, that's a different thing, but this is sportier than that. I think this is strong competition for the Aston Vantage, which Zach has driven, but I haven't driven the newest one yet. I think that will be a good comparison. I think the Aston's probably a little faster, but this is probably a little more well-rounded, if I had to guess, based on what I know about those cars. So, you know, I'm impressed at what they've done with this car, and I think it's actually quite a delight every day and up here on the hill. So, thank you guys for watching. Thanks to Mercedes for letting me have a go today, and I'll see you later.
And remember, always fight your tickets on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.